Freya would like to know, are God forms the same as invoking something? The simplest way to explain this is part of the technique that we use. We use the assumption of God forms. Like, for example, if you want to have the energies of Horus, you build up the energies of the image of Horus, or you need the images of Anubis. These are very useful, very, very useful, because there are times that you need the wisdom of Jehudi, or you need the power of Horus for some magical working or another. And it's not that you're worshiping these Egyptian gods. That's certainly not why they're here. These statues are here as conduits of spiritual force, of energy. And the whole point of assuming a god form is to bring a special quality of energy into yourself for a particular ritual that you then, at the end of the ritual, take it back off again. So it's not a question of worshiping Egyptian gods or Hebrew angels or anything like this. No, it's a question of technique. It is a spiritual technology. Remember, the Golden Dawn itself is not a religion. The Golden Dawn itself is a set of spiritual technologies. We use things like the assumption of God forms in order to empower ourselves with a certain quality of power or energy that we need for a specific intention. Are God forms the same as invoking something? What do you mean by invocation? That's the big question, because
if I may be so bold, I'd say she's probably coming at it from more of a pagan standpoint, where thinking of like drawing down the moon.
Okay, yeah. Is that what you meant? Okay, because look, if you're talking about Golden Dawn invocation, it's one answer, because we use the assumption of God forms as part of a larger invocation. But if you're talking about invocation like in the pagan sense, you may want to take that one instead.
Right. Invocation in the pagan sense is completely different. And you should not use pagan methodologies when doing the ceremonial magic. The pagan system has really, it's ceremonial magic that's really been stripped down to its bare essentials.
Well, and there's another problem.
The voodoo creep.
Yeah, the voodoo creep into Wicca.
Not a particular person when we say creep.
No, I'm talking about it creeping in. Voodoo creeping into Wicca, creating its whole subgenre of dark Wicca without them even realizing what they're up to.
Yeah, it's really
there's a huge difference between the assumption of a god form like we've been talking about, and the way you do it is you build up the image in front of you and then you step into it. You can also, if you're working with an Egyptian god form, you can use something from their ancient rites of Egypt, that you plenty of that stuff around in E.A. Budge and other books, so you can find that sort of stuff if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
This is something very different than what they do in voodoo. In voodoo, the voodoo practitioners are making themselves passive receptacles to be possessed. It's a form of voluntary possession, and it's extremely dangerous. And I do not recommend that you do it. And it is actually has been in our order prohibited by oath from the very beginning. I promise not to put myself into such a passive or mediumistic state so as to lose my power of will or something like that. And that's exactly what happens to these voodoo practitioners being ridden by the Loa.
And the difference is, okay, if you think of your physical body as this glass, when you're being ridden by the Loa, what happens is your consciousness gets dumped out and the Loa consciousness comes in. Now, if you're doing the Golden Dawn style, what happens is you immerse yourself in the water. Do you see?
It's more like
rather than having something come into you, you go into it.
Instead of getting taken over by it, it's more like putting on a jacket.
Right.
It's like a vestment that you're putting on.
Right.
You are investing yourself with the energies of the God form, and afterwards you divest yourself again of the God form. And
that's why doing it the voodoo way is so dangerous.
And when you're in the Golden Dawn way, when you're assuming God forms, you as a magician are always in control. You are always present. Your ego is there. Your consciousness is there. You are always in control of the situation. You are the magician holding the right.
Anything happens
not the God
you decide.
Form moving you. No, that's not the way it's done. And unfortunately, because of this whole eclectic stuff that you find, all these books on Llewellyn and everything, and all of the nonsense about the black magicians talking a lot of smack about whatever. However it got there, you got voodoo creep in Wicca today. And that in the sense that there are so many covens out there that think drawing down the moon and this investment of the high priest and the priest and the priestess with the divine energies is something that should be like being ridden by the Loa. No, that's not what it is. That's a complete misunderstanding. And I know where it came from. It came from Aleister Crowley. That son of a bee. Again, there you go. I just struck me. It must come from him. That's how I got to Wicca. Because unfortunately, Gerald Gardner, he borrowed a lot of Golden Dawn magic for Wicca, but unfortunately, he didn't get a pure transmission.
Right.
He got it through Crowley, and Crowley was completely deviant.
Doreen Valiente did her best to scrub the Crowley shit stain off of Wicca, and she has done quite a good job of it. So there's not as much of it as there used to be, which is nice.
Yeah. So anyway, you don't want to do that. You don't want anything to do with voodoo. You don't want anything to do with any sort of Wiccan coven that thinks that drawing down the moon is like being like a voodoo ritual being ridden by the Loa. You want nothing to do with that. These are black magical practices that are extremely dangerous and have absolutely no business in Wicca either.
Right, because how many times have you heard of somebody needing to get depossessed? You know, they go to an exorcist because they can't get whatever they invited in out.
Right.
Just don't invite them in. That's the simple solution. Why do some magical systems assign different directions and god names to the elements? All right. The reason why they do that is based on language. Why do the French say 4, 6, 5 and we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's linguistically based, and it's also based on the energies of the area. For example, on the East Coast witches, especially ones in Virginia Beach, kind of have a hard time associating water with the West, seeing as how the Atlantic Ocean is to the east of them. And so many of the traditional practitioners there will move things around in order to put the magical system they're working in alignment with the natural world that they see, because they're doing natural magic, and those are the rules for natural magic. You can't, if you're doing natural magic, and there's a lake in the north and a mountain to the south, you're not going to put water in the west and earth in the north. It doesn't make sense for where you are. Now, this is how Golden Dawn magic is different, because it's working with different, rather than working with the energies of mountains and rivers and streams and fields, you're working with planets and constellations and elements. And you see how that dislocates you from the physical three-dimensional natural world and puts you at a different level of magical manipulation of natural forces.
Exactly.
Have you ever wanted to gain real magical abilities so you can become the master of your destiny?
Do you wish you could get the ancient secret key for free so you can build the life of your dreams?
If you've wanted more out of life, to become all that you can be, physically, romantically, financially, spiritually, then you need to take action and get this right now.
That's right, and for free, but it won't be available for much longer.
So go right now to thescienceofmiracles.com and get started. Achieve the prosperous life you want for yourself. Gain ultimate life mastery.
Are you familiar with the Rosicrucian with what's his name? He's popular in the States. He's the president or the from the Golden Dawn. What's his name?
Oh.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
Have David Griffin.
I saw an email yesterday that he sent out about, there's a magical war going on.
Demons of the infernal realm. There is really a magical work going on. There is a guy called David Griffin who is heading all these magicians.
David Griffin is S.L. McGregor Mather's present successor.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
Dave the Griffin.
I'm Golden Dawn Imperator David Griffin.
David Griffin.
David Griffin.
Dave the Griffin. David Griffin.
You know, there's a magical war going on.
So there is really a magical work going on.